We're going to take a look at the chair. So you can see this is a kind of stylized metal chair. Now, the nice thing about this is you can see that these objects are the pictures here. We're fortunate to have these images to reference. Now, if you can get this, this is awesome to really help you draw objects. So these are all picture planes. You can see them over here in the layers. They're on locked layers. It's always a good idea whenever you have pictures to put them on layers and lock them. That way they don't actually accidentally get selected, deselected, deleted. Just put them on a locked layer. I'm going to switch to the curves layer here. So you can see there's a curves layer, frame layer, seat layer. Again, good idea to have everything separated up into different parts of your object. I'm going to switch to the front view and I'm going to draw the chair in profile. The process here is to draw lines, fillet the lines, curve them, and turn them into solid pipes with the pipe command. So let's start off with the coordinates that we have from the tutorial guide. So this is exercise 6.8, the chair. I'm going to again start off with a polyline. And again, if you're an AutoCAD user, the polyline is the same as the line in AutoCAD. It's a continuous line. For my absolute coordinates, I'm going to start off with coordinate 4, 2, which starts my line right there. And I'm going to turn on ortho. So now I'm working in 90-degree angles. And the first line I'm going to type in is 44. So I'm going to type 44 for the length. Press enter. Okay, so press enter actually sets the length. Now I'm going to click to pick the point, and now I'm going to move up. Okay, so the next one I'm going up at a 90-degree angle, so the next length is 43. And again, all I've done is I've entered in the length of the line. I haven't chosen the direction. I'm going to go up and I'm going to click enter. I'm not too sure why in this tutorial it seems to be a lot taller than the picture, but let's just go with the instructions. Alright, so now I'm going to go back by 39. Press enter to lock in the length. Click to lock in the point. Okay, I'm going to go up at a relative direction. Now, there's a couple of ways I can do this. So I can type in less than 100. So the less than sign actually indicates an angle, and press enter. Okay, so you can see now I'm going up at an angle of 100 degrees. So that is 90 degrees plus 10, so 100 degrees clockwise, counterclockwise from the x-axis. And I'm going to go up a length of 42. Click, and I'm done there. So press enter to finish. So there is the start of my curve. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to this side, the right side of my chair, and I'm going to go in 45 millimeters or 45, actually millimeters, inches, not too sure. It seems to be a bit big for inches and a bit small for millimeters. Ours is not to wonder why. I'm going to do a single line, and I'm going to make sure my object snap is on. So I need to snap to an endpoint. So make sure that you see this. There's a check mark next to endpoint. Make sure that's unchecked. That turns all your object snaps off. I'm going to click here, And the distance I want to go here, the width is 45. And enter. Okay. So now you can see if I look in my perspective view, and if you want to see a little more clearly what you've drawn, we can turn off the picture. So I've turned the layer off with the picture, and now I can see what I've drawn here. I'll turn that back on. All right, so I've got that line, that line. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line. Now, notice how when I select it, it selects all of the lines. Again, that's the feature of the polyline. Notice how it didn't select this line. This line was drawn separately. So, make sure you know the difference between a polyline and a line. I'm going to select that line. I'm going to hit Transform, Copy. Here's the point I'm going to grab it from, this top point right here. And I'm going to move. Now ortho is on, so it's locking me to 90 degrees. Sometimes I find it helpful to turn ortho off. It's easier to see where you're moving it to. And click there and press enter. Okay, so now I've got the outline of that chair. And I'm going to finish it off. I'll just turn off the picture here so I can see clearly what I'm doing. The last thing I want to do, double click, switch over to perspective, is I'm going to draw one more line from this point to that point. All right, so now I've got a nice continuous chair here. All right, so we're going to take a look at making construction planes here. So what I'm going to do first of all is create what's called a construction plane. Now, if you're taking a look at your object the way it is, right now we have 3 construction planes. We've got the top construction plane, we've got the front construction plane, and we've got the right construction plane. Perspective uses the top construction plane. That's the grid here. So if you take a look at the grid, you can see that it's flipped 90 degrees in every view. And just an example, if I draw a rectangle, now if I'm not attached to anything and I draw on the top viewpoint, it draws on my construction plane. You can see right here. Now if I draw my rectangle instead in the front viewport, it draws on the front construction plane. And the front construction plane, you can see, lines up with the x-axis equals 0. So there's the front construction plane. You just don't see a grid here. Same thing if I draw on the right construction plane. Again, you can see there's the triangle, the rectangle I drew, and it lines up with the y-axis equals 0. So every construction plane is a flat surface that lines up. Now we can create our own construction plane. What I'd like to do is create a plane that is parallel to the back of the chair. You can see the back of the chair is angled. Now I don't have to do this, but this is just let's just add this in here. So in the view menu, I'm going to pick, whoops, sorry, not the view menu, back up a little bit here. So starting in the view menu, I'm going to go set C-plane, set construction plane. Now I'm just going to use this one with 3 points. So starting off with the origin of my construction plane is going to be this point right here. Now the next thing I need to do is line up along the x-axis. So the x-axis I'm going to have line up with this arm right here. Click there. And then lastly, the orientation, I'm going to click there. Okay, so now you can see that I have a new construction plane that lines up with the back of my chair. So what that means is if I want to draw anything on it, it will show up in that construction plane and it will be aligned up with that object. Now, what I can also do is I can save this. I can give it a name and I can save it. So on the View menu, set construction plane, and I'm going to open up the panel on the right called Named Construction Planes. Now that's going to show up over here on the right, and I'm going to give this construction plane a name, clicking on the plus sign, and I will call this chair back. And you know, if you want to be specific, chair back C-plane. I know in the instructions it just says chair back, but later on we're going to be naming something else chair back, and I kind of like to have what is this the name of. Okay, now another thing that we'll take a look at is creating a named view. So these are my views: top, front, right, and perspective. So I'm going to create a new view. So on the view menu, click set view and plan. Okay, so now what it's doing is it's looking straight down on my construction plane. So again, go back to the view menu, set view, and I'm going to go to named views. Okay, so the named views show up over here. And I'm going to click on the plus sign, and I'm going to save my current viewport settings as chair back. There's that phrase again, and maybe I'll call this one view, chair back view. Okay, so now I've got this new view, and you can see this has changed up here. This is now chair back view. Now, if I want to change back to perspective, I can click on the down arrow here, go to set view, and choose perspective. And I'm still using my current construction plane. All right, so we're going to make a back to the chair, a little hole in the back for some material. And this is why we like having a construction plane. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a curve, rectangle, corner to corner, and I'm just going to draw that on my construction plane. Now, this doesn't go into the tutorial, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to have this centered in between one place to another. Now I could use the dimensions. I'm going to use the Smart Track option here. So this is turned on. I'm going to select this and select Transform and Move. Now, if I choose Midpoint as an object snap, you can see I can snap to midpoint, and then I get a snapping reference line here. And if you remember this from AutoCAD, if I choose this midpoint and go back, you can see now I can snap to that center of my object. And I can grab it by my center. Well, I've got ortho turned on. I'm just going to turn that off for now. Now, I'd like to move it into the center, so I'm going to snap to the midpoint of this line here, snap to the midpoint of this line here. I'm not clicking, and click right there. So now what that does is that moves that into the center. Now, one other thing, if I find that's too big, I've just turned on something called the gumball. The gumball is a nice little object. You might have worked with this. I'm just going to stretch that a little bit. Use these little rectangles to stretch it. This stretches it relative to the center point. And there we go. Okay, so let's see what this looks like as a solid. I'm going to go back to my construction planes, and I'm going to choose World Top for my construction plane. Okay, so there's my top, front, and right view, and you can see I'm back to my normal construction plane there. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a solid. First thing I'd like to do is I'm going to join this So I'm pressing Shift and I am selecting all of the lines. I'm going to go to Edit and Join. So what that does is that now turns that into one object. So it kind of connects my lines together, which is nice. I'm going to go to Solid and I'm going to choose the Pipe command. I'm going to select my pipe for the rail, which is this. And let's go, you can see this is going to be the diameter of my pipe. And let's choose the radius. I'm going to type in 3 for the radius and press Enter. And my next radius, okay, do I want to change the radius? I don't want to change the radius. I want to keep it 3 and press Enter. Okay, let's see what that looks like in shaded mode. All right. So you can see right there. Now, actually, what I should have done, I am currently on the default layer, or depending on where you picked up, could be on the curves layer. I should have put this on the frame layer. This is on the wrong layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select my object. I'm going to go over here to Object Properties. That's this little ring right here. And I'm going to choose the frame layer. Okay, so I just moved it to that layer. And we'll switch back. There we go. Okay, so that looks okay. What that does is that now that looks like it's made out of welded pipe, and it's all welded at the corners. Not really a very nice looking chair. So I'm going to undo that. And there we go. I'm also going to make sure that my curves are on the right layer. My curves are on the default layer. I'm going to move that to my curves layer. There we go. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is I would like to fillet the corners. So the fillet is basically, imagine rounding things off. I'm going to select everything and I'm going to go to Curve. Now there's an option of Fillet Curves. Fillet Curves is when you have two lines connecting together and you want to fillet them. It's a polyline, so I can fillet the corners. Okay, now radius. So I'll start off with the default radius. Let's set that to something small. Let's set that to 1. And you can see a preview there. It rounds off the corners, but it really doesn't look that great. All right, let's undo that. Let's try another one. Let's try setting it to 5. Okay, so now you can see that's a bit better. Let's go up to 10. Okay, and you can see the bigger the radius, the more the curves will fillet. Now, it is possible to go to big. Let's just go nuts and go to 50, okay? Nothing happens. That's because you cannot fit a fillet of radius 50 on these curves. So there is an upper limit. You know, even if I go to 20, okay, 20 is looking a little extreme there. So at this point, it's actually a matter of aesthetics and function. So let's stick with 10. And press Enter. Okay, so that's nice. That just filleted all of my curves. Now, I joined it all together to make it one polyline. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to break it all apart so I can create individual surfaces. So for that, I'm going to choose the Explode command. Okay, so Edit and Explode. I went a little quick there. There it is right there. Edit and Explode. Now what that does is it breaks it up into individual pieces. How many pieces? Well, usually it breaks it up to straight lines and curves. You might end up breaking it up into a lot more pieces. I'm going to create a back surface here using edge curves. Okay, so this is now the difference between a surface and a curve. So depending on what I'm using, I'm going to press enter here. Now that made a nice little surface right there, and again I did it on the wrong layer. Not paying it, that should be on this layer. So I'll just go back again. There we go. It's always nice to know how to recover from a mistake. Alright, so that's one layer, and you can see that I can just use two lines and say make a surface between them. Now that's not always going to work. There are some commands that will work with this, like notice how these lines are parallel. If they're parallel, this will work fine. If they're not parallel, you might get some unpredictable results. Let's do the other ones here. Let's see what that does. Okay, that creates a nice surface, and that creates a nice surface. Not very functional chair right now because everything is either 1 or 2 dimensional, so could not actually exist in the real world. Okay. Now, if I want to make all of those one surface, I'm going to press the Shift key and select them all, and I'm going to join them all together. Okay, so now I have one poly surface, and a poly surface is made up of multiple surfaces. You can see right here it's an open poly surface. Now if you're wondering what we're going to do with the hole, we're going to use the hole to cut, or rather use this line to cut a hole. So I'm going to go to the Edit menu and I'm going to select Trim. Here's my cutting object. Now this will only work because this curve is on the surface. Press Enter, select Object to Trim, click on the middle, and there we go. We just cut a hole in there. And again, when I drew that curve, I did it on the construction plane where the back was, and that made absolutely sure that that would cut that. If that curve were anywhere else, it would not do the cutting. All right. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to go back, and I'm done cutting, so press Enter. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to go back, and now you can actually see if I right-click on the command line here, here's all the previous commands. I'm going to go back and choose my pipe command. There's my, okay, now notice again when I click on that, I only get the one line. Remember I used the explode command? Okay, let's try that again. Select rail, I'm going to choose chain edges. Let's see if that works. No, I have to go around and select. Now I need to select all those curves. And another way I can do that is this. I'm going to go here to my selection menu, and I'm going to go select curves. Okay, so you see that selected all of my curves. And I can go back and I can join them again. So now I've got that rejoined. The other thing I can do is I can go over here, and because all of my curves are on one layer, I can actually go here, I can right click on this layer and go select objects. So what that does is it selects all the objects on that layer. So that's another reason why we like to keep everything on separate layers. Okay, so again, I'll go back, do that pipe command. All right, and I'll use a radius of, let's go with 2. 3 seems to be a bit much. All right, press Enter. Okay, that looks pretty nice. There's our chair. Now, again, you notice that this surface is kind of flat. Well, we could probably do better than that. Hang on. I'm going to try that one more time. Let's go with 1. Yeah, that actually looks a little bit more realistic in terms of a chair. Or even maybe 1.5. Let's split the difference. Okay. So always go back and forth till it looks good. Now, again, if you want to make something realistic or more 3D, we don't usually stick to just flat surfaces. What I can do with this one is I'm going to go to Surface, and let's go to Offset Surface. And I'm going to make this a solid. And let's say the distance is 0.5, sounds good, half, and press Enter. Okay. So now what that does is that actually makes that, it gives that some actual thickness as opposed to a flat sheet. Okay, so there is the chair, and of course, if you want to move on, do some rendering, making it look a little bit more realistic, that would be the next step.